Hello, welcome back to 3 Delirium. My name is AJ, and this week I've been working on a somewhat practical print. At work, there's been a sign that is currently handwritten on a piece of wood, and I would like to make that sign catch the eye a little better. But that might be easier said than done. Stick with me and we'll see what I mean. In a previous video, I had made this dice-based points tracker that used 2 different colors of filament. I noticed that the first layer, or the bottom, the color is very apparent. So for this new sign, I figured that this is something of which I can take advantage. Therefore, I knew that I'd want to use an elongated pyramid shape as the best overall general shape of the entire sign. This way, the bottom edge would stick out a little more, giving the sign a border of the bottom color, which will be orange in this case. When it came to measurements of the sign, I know I want the sign to fit perfectly over the existing handwritten marker words, covering them up completely, while also taking up as little additional space as possible. But on my average workday, I don't have a measuring tape on me, so I used my arm. I noticed that the words were 2 fingers high, and the whole thing stretched from my knuckles down to my elbow. So when I got home, I grabbed my trusty measuring tape and measured the distance of both of those. The sign itself was easy enough to make, but it occurred to me that the whole sign was far too big to print on my 3D printer, since the build plate here is smaller than my arm is long. Now, I would like to not make the words, unlegible, so I need to be as close as I can to make them complete words while still having 2 similar sized pieces. Next I knew that the 3D prints, like PLA material, is not the most durable, so I figured that I would need to make the screw holes ahead of time so that we don't have to punch through the signs themselves. To make this work the best, I would also need countersunk as well, so that the head of the screw would sit below the surface of the sign. Excellent. With the signs done, they merely need to be sliced. Now, again, after not learning my lesson, I saw that my standard quality of printing, which is around 0.1 millimeter, would take over 2.5 hours to print for each individual piece of the sign. Now, this seemed to be far too long, so I wanted to print them as quick as I can using the least amount of filament, and I bumped it down to that draft quality again. Now, that's then an hour and a half to print each, which sounded far more reasonable. Before we were done in the slicing software, I wanted to check the timeline slider here. I discovered in that point tracker video that I can see exactly where the print time will be in the specific stages of the print. So, taking note of where the print will be when I want to swap the filament out, it's time to hit print. Well, after setting the timer on my phone and pressing print, I've already confused the 2 separate halves, and I seem to have checked on this one a little too soon. Maybe 10 more minutes should do the trick. Yeah, that seemed to be about perfect. Instead of fast-forwarding through the process of changing the filaments, I'm going to let this changeover play out in real time. For science. Fantastic! With both of these signs done, it's all too apparent the downside of the draft quality print, though. It forced the printer to abandon the more supportive gyroid style infill pattern I usually use on most of my prints in exchange for a generic grid pattern, which then in turn provides a little less support and makes the infill itself slightly more apparent. Although, as a practical sign that merely conveys a message, it's not that big of a problem. With these done, though, all that's left to do is to take them to work and, donate to them to the cause. But I think these things turned out rather nicely, and I'm happy with the color change. I think it looks pretty good. It's shallow enough to have the orange letters show through, but deep enough to ensure that the screw holes are filled with white. But what do you think? Would you have done something differently entirely? Or maybe you would have printed them in something higher quality than draft? Well, leave your thoughts down in the comments down below, and I'll see if I can get a picture of these bad boys in action. Just keep an eye on our Instagram page to see if I can get one of those. Although, if I were my boss, I might not hang every sign an employee brings in. Well, thank you for joining me this week here in 3 Delirium, where we can all hallucinate about the possibilities of 3D printing. I'll catch you next week.